Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Tranquility du Jour. Conversations on living a full and meaningful life with doses of tranquility. I am your host, Kimberly Wilson, and this is episode 544. So today, I wanted to chat a little bit about going on retreat, how to set yourself up, why it's important, how to create your own, and what do you do post-retreat. Now, a reminder that on Saturday, I am hosting my next virtual retreat. So for those of you who will be joining, I can't wait to host you. And those of you who are listening to this afterwards, I want you to know how to create your own and think about why retreating is so important, especially as we think of hopefully turning the corner on the pandemic and getting back to some semblance of normalcy. Now, in addition, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who came out to the TDJ Style pop-up virtual event on Saturday. We had people join from Israel. I think that was a first. Spain, UK, France, Mexico, across the US, and then Canada. So what a delight to be with you. And a big thank you to my TDJ aficionados who shared very creative ways to wear some of our traditional pieces. So Melinda, Hannah, Kelly, and Barbara, a big thank you. Now, I do have a link to the event that you can find at KimberlyWilson.com. Now, one of the things about that event that was so fun is just showcasing and sharing our new 8-piece capsule wardrobe and the many ways to wear it. And, the reason behind a capsule wardrobe, of course, is like, how do we dress things up and dress things down and take our joggers that we've been living in for the past year and transition them maybe even into the office, if you live in if you work in a more creative setting. And, really just to begin to showcase who we are and the ways in which we want to show up in the world. And during the pop-up, I also shared a bit on the psychology of fashion. Who knew? But it's an emerging field in psychology. And Carolyn Mayer, M-A-I-R, has written a book called The Psychology of Fashion. And I think the piece that really stands out is how the way in which we present ourselves and the clothing that we wear, how it tells a story and how it affects our mood physically and psychologically. So really interesting. Anyway, today is all about retreat. So I want to just remind everyone to hit the subscribe button to make sure you are getting your doses of Tranquility du Jour each and every week. Also, there is a link in the show notes to the TDJ Live Masterclass replay. That's $10 for the video download, and the proceeds benefit Pigs and Pugs Project, so a big thank you for your support. Then, of course, there's also the replay of TDJ Style pop-up that I mentioned earlier, and that you can actually find in the show notes, or you can also find it at KimberlyWilson.com/TDJ Style. Okay, so without further ado, let's chat about retreating and why in the world it is so very important. And how to set yourself up. So, the thing about retreating that I have noticed, having led retreats for the past really about 2 decades, globally, locally, nationally, they are so important. And they're also actually kind of hard. And what I mean by that is pushing the pause button on your life to take a moment, step back, and do some reflection. It's not easy. I mean, most people after a day or two can kind of settle in, but some people, they just can't. They're so revved up that it's really hard to disconnect or to be isolated in Provence or, to be away from their daily creature comforts. And so who knew, but retreating is actually not easy, and it's not for the faint of heart. Now, the good thing about something like Saturday is it's virtual, so you can do it from anywhere. You don't have to travel. And you have your creature comforts nearby. You can have your pets nearby. You have your flowers. You have your plants. You have your candles. You have all your creature comforts, which, sometimes if we're in a remote jungle or in a remote, villa in the countryside of Provence or Italy, it's not as easy because you might not have a suitcase filled with all those things. So the first thing that I like to encourage people to keep in mind with regard to retreating is really to bring an open mind, right? Because it's really, it's like even if you've done 20 retreats in the past, every retreat is unique. Every time you show up on retreat, you're different. You're in a different place in your life. And so there's this great Zen saying about, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. So showing up with a beginner's mind, even if you're like, oh my gosh, I've heard all this before, or I know all this, or I've done all this yoga, it's like to really see what it is that you can take away from the experience, one little nugget that will stick with you. So approaching the experience with a sense of playfulness, openness, and curiosity. And remember that there's no one way to do any of the practices or to participate. So you modify as needed. I've had people come to Costa Rica and like during the experience, during the meals when everyone would be eating together, they would go and kind of do their own thing, which I totally respected. Sometimes you're on retreat to literally treat, not to socialize. And so that's the beauty of giving yourself what it is you need at that time. So I encourage you to really think about that in whatever stage of retreat you are at. So even if you're going to set up your own retreat at home for maybe it's a bed day, right? Or maybe it's a half-day retreat or a whole weekend, to just think about, okay, how can I approach this with a sense of playfulness, curiosity, and openness? Now, the other thing is to gather your tools. So I mentioned earlier the importance of creature comforts. So things like cozy clothing and definitely stuff that stretches as you move. I like things like lavender oil, scarves. I've got this really yummy fleece scarf from the TDJ line, rose water spray, lip balm, flowers, candles, twinkle lights, all those sorts of things. I travel with a lot of these actually, but it's like thinking for yourself, what can you have nearby to help set yourself up so that you feel like I'm grounded, I'm nurtured in a really safe space. The other thing is creativity supplies, right? So you definitely want to bring your journal and sketchbook, and sketchbook is for your art journaling, or if you're going to do any sketching or any sort of creative work. Journal, of course, to do your writing tools. I tend to pack a lot of pens, a glue stick, scissors, and I like a black Sharpie. Now, additional things that you can take on a retreat if you're doing creativity are things like small bottles of acrylic paint in your favorite colors. And those are usually like $1 or $2 at, your local kind of craft store. An old credit card or a key card, which is like your paintbrush for art journaling, stamps and stamp pads, colored pencils, washi tape, which I'm obsessed with, any other favorite tools, because you never know when you're going to be inspired. Watercolors are so lovely too. People who do a lot of travel watercolor journaling is just beautiful. Now, ephemera is another thing that's really helpful if you're going to be doing art journaling. And that's bits of paper, such as images that you pull from magazines, scrap paper, postcards, tissue paper, things along those lines, so little bits of paper. Of course, if you're going to be doing a virtual retreat, you need a computer or smartphone with internet access. And then for your yoga and meditation, a sticky mat and a meditation cushion or a chair. So those are the main kind of accoutrements that you will need to retreat. The other thing is really to remove distractions. I see a lot of people on retreat now that smartphones are ubiquitous, like on their phone scrolling. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we are away from, regular everyday life. So even if you're just taking a 2-hour retreat for yourself, can you set your phone aside, put it on Do Not Disturb, and really drop into the experience? Close all those browsers, particularly if you're virtual, and remove distractions. The other thing is you want to set the stage. So wearing something comfortable, particularly if you are traveling, you want to be comfortable, and definitely something that like stretches and you feel good in. I like to spritz perfume, sip green juice, and a cup of tea. So I'll have like 3 libations nearby. Even when I'm teaching on retreat, I usually have at least 2, like my water bottle and a cup of tea. Moisturize, get a good night's sleep before the retreat. Eat a nourishing meal, so make sure you're really filling yourself with whole foods that you're going to feel yummy in. Have your tools within reach. So you want to have all those accoutrements that I mentioned pulled together. Light a candle to signify the start of each session. So this, of course, is more for virtual, but even if I am leading a retreat, I sometimes like to do this ritual also. So it's, lighting a candle and then blowing it out at the end. And it's a way just to signify the start of what we're doing. And also just making your retreat setup inviting. So if you tend to have piles of paperwork on your desk like I do, just grab that and set it aside. It will be ready for you when you are done. Now, those of you joining for the virtual retreat, we have a private Facebook group, and I often do set these up actually for all retreats. And it's a way for you to kind of introduce yourself and check in before we get started. And then it's always fun, too, to see people's photos. So sharing those photos. So for my virtual retreat, sharing them using hashtag Tranquility du Jour. But, even if you are on retreat and maybe you're like, oh, I don't want to post stuff while I'm away, I want to just kind of do my own thing. Well, you can still snap those photos so that you have the ability to really remember some of those special experiences and tours or walks around the neighborhood that you may do as part of your retreat. Now, of course, the other thing is you want to set your retreat date and your venue. And if it's an organized retreat with a group, well, then, that's already set. But if it's a day in bed with your fur baby or an afternoon picnicking in the park during your lunch break, whatever it might be, just getting it in the calendar and setting it. Of course, too, as I mentioned earlier, start that disconnection process. So just make sure that you are slowly weaning yourself off constant email checking, Facebook updating, Pinterest pinning, etc. And observing your habitual patterns during this process. Because as I mentioned earlier, say you're on a week retreat, it takes a while to disconnect and to stop those habits of just like constantly reaching for your phone. So if you can begin to kind of wean yourself off before your retreat, it helps the retreat go a bit smoother. And of course, during the retreat, as I mentioned, it's really important to turn your attention inward and really soak up the experience and the sensations, noticing them in your body. Feeling your breath, observing your monkey mind, which is the mind that wanders from thought to thought, like a monkey in the forest going limb to limb. Keeping pen and paper nearby to jot down inspiration. So, of course, we do this throughout virtual retreats, but even if you're on retreat in a park, having your ideas book or your journal nearby to just note things that come up for you and that you observe and that you feel and that you notice. Now, it's also, okay, what do we do post-retreat? How do we take this retreat experience with us? So, over the years, I get this question a lot. And so I've created a few ways, 5 ways with ideas on, okay, how do we take this with us so that we remember this experience? So it's not just like, oh, it was this 3-hour virtual retreat or this week in Costa Rica or, these few days in West Virginia, whatever it is. We want this experience to kind of seep into our bones, so to speak, and become part of the way in which we live our lives. So the first thing is slow. So number 1, slow. Let your return back to reality be gradual. Create space for yourself to ease back into routine and keep the slower pace of the retreat with you. Remember to breathe and observe what is happening within. Number 2 is nook. Create a space to hold memories of what fed you on the retreat. Maybe it's a quote, a page from your art journal, or a resource. Have your art supplies, meditation cushion, journal, and yoga mat in this nook so that you can create and practice during those sweet moments in between. And what I mean by that is in between those everyday appointments and meetings and what have you. Can you take a few minutes, go into your nook and do a few sun salutations or write in your journal? Number 3 is hold. Keep the retreat experience close to your heart. Honor taking the time for yourself and how you showed up Stay connected to your senses, the movement in yoga, the sitting and walking in meditation, the reflection in journaling, the play in art journaling, and the taste in mindful eating. Because, on retreat, oftentimes it's like, okay, more yoga. Okay, more, let's go eat. We do yoga. But even say these 3-hour virtual retreats, we still take a break kind of midway. And I encourage snacking throughout just so that you feel like satiated and you're not like, going, oh, what am I going to eat for dinner, right? It's like, how can you really drop into the experience and savor whatever comes your way? Number 4 is space. Carve out a sense of spaciousness in your schedule. So avoid overbooking and work with your energy flow. Midday naps or walks around a city block can have a profound effect on your mind, body, and spirit. And then number 5 is explore. Consider how you felt different from your time on retreat. What do you understand better about yourself? What were your takeaways, and how are they expanding now? So those are my 5 ideas on ways in which we can take our retreat with us into our everyday lives. And Patrick Shin writes, the world needs people who retreat from the world in order to see it more clearly. And that really is the beauty of a retreat. The ability to step back, kind of have a bird's eye view of what is happening. So it's like rather being in your kind of nitty gritty of life, you're kind of on the nitty gritty of life. You're looking at it from above and kind of exploring it, right? Versus being in it. And whenever I say kind of looking at it and exploring it, it gives you the opportunity to ask what's working, what isn't working. So in the virtual retreat on Saturday, we have 3 different modules. We have retreat, we have flow, and we have create. And within this, we do a lot of reflection, clearly, through journal writing. The flow section is yoga and mindfulness. And then the create section is looking at a variety of tranquility tools and healthy habits and ways to kind of begin to look at life post-pandemic, and then creating an art journal spread around it, which is our creative play. So I hope you can join us on Saturday or for a future virtual retreat. I offer usually 2 to 4 of these a year. This year I am doing 4, this year being 2021, and would love to have you with us. You can find out more about it at KimberlyWilson.com/virtual retreat. Also, this week, it becomes April, so we'll have a new book club, which I'll be announcing later this week, and would love to have you reading along. And you can do so in the TDJ Insiders Facebook group. There's a link to that in the show notes, or you can just Google Tranquility du Jour Insiders Facebook. You would go to Facebook and put in Tranquility du Jour Insiders group, and you would find it and ask to join. Would love to have you. And then also a reminder to sign up for Love Notes, where you get weekly love straight to your inbox, invites, inspiration, and more. Also, a gentle reminder, I have 6 books and a planner in case you are looking to incorporate more tranquility into your everyday life. Would love to have you check those out. You can find them on Amazon. And if you like them, would be so grateful if you would write a review. Also, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Tranquility du Jour. So thank you as always for tuning in. It's always a treat to be with you, and I look forward to sharing lots of exciting programming with you next month. All right, have a great week. Namaste.